Today we'll be diving into this a little bit more, the concept of being a neighbor in Dallas, a good neighbor. My name is Sarah Steinmann, and by day I'm a consultant for an airline focused on our hiring, pipelining, and inclusion initiatives. And outside of work, and mainly why I'm here today, is I wrote a book called The Dallas Good Neighbor Guide, which is focused on actionable steps that people can take to know and love their neighbors in Dallas. Today, we'll be spending our time in 3 areas. First, learning about how the past and present realities of Dallas might compel us towards more action on behalf of our neighbors. Second, thinking about our very real limitations when it comes to neighboring. And third, thinking about how our workplaces can be a conduit for neighboring on behalf of our community. So we will go ahead and jump right in the near future.
Sorry about that, a little technical difficulty. There we go.
Perfect. Okay, we can go ahead and keep going. So today we're going to start by talking about the past reality and the present reality of Dallas. This is a little bit heavier of a way to start our conversation today, but I think it will be helpful for laying a framework for how we think about neighboring in Dallas. So hopefully, Lord willing, we will spend the next 5 minutes covering all of the past of Dallas and the present of Dallas in the next 5 minutes. So here we go. I will just keep going. So Dallas, back several hundred years ago, before it was primarily occupied by settlers, was lived in by Native Americans who were from primarily the Caddo and the Wichita tribes. Oh, look at that. Okay, so if you look and see Dallas area, you can see Wichita and Caddo in the area that now primarily is the city of Dallas. Okay, so after that, in 1841, John Neely Bryan was a lawyer and a trader from Tennessee who moved into the Dallas area and built a cabin on the shores of what is today the Trinity River. Shortly after that, in 1844, people came and established the town site that now is Dallas today. So you can think of Dallas as we know it today was formed in 1844. Dallas really began to grow and expand in the 1870s with the arrival of the railroad, and that was an intentional ploy by the business community of Dallas. They kind of snuck the fact that the railroad had to come through the city of Dallas into a contract, and you can see that Dallas business community remaining strong today. The adjacent communities of East Dallas and Oak Cliff were annexed shortly after that. So for all of you Oak Cliff dwellers here, you can know that you became a part of the city of Dallas and increased the size of the city in 1903. Raise your hand if you had heard of that history of Dallas before, if you knew the history of Dallas. We have some folks, kind of a little bit. So if you hadn't known about the history of Dallas, that is because of a phenomenon that historians and sociologists call the Dallas origin myth. That is the idea where we simply say a city has always existed. We don't really know the history of the city. We don't really know its past. We just think of it as always existing. The origin is a myth. Often, cities have origin myths because of potentially challenging or painful parts of its past that we might not want to know or reflect on. For Dallas specifically, in the 1920s, the Ku Klux Klan was formed, and the rate of membership grew quickly to become the largest Ku Klux Klan membership of any city in the entire country, here in Dallas. That was about 1 in 3 eligible men in Dallas, which were white men. And as you can imagine, that had huge implications on creating the city of Dallas, who had access to capital, who had access to wealth and connections. We can still see a lot of the impact of that history of Dallas today. Another practice that had a significant impact on the city of Dallas was the practice of redlining, which was a legal practice organized and approved by banks where they would draw a red line. You can see that on the maps, the red areas, where the bank said, we are not going to offer loans to anyone who lives in this area. It was a legal way to say anyone in this area, which were primarily and all communities of color can't gain access to capital in order to move out of the city or to begin to grow their capital and wealth. So we see a lot of the impact of that today. That's a little bit about the past of Dallas, but today, Dallas is a growing and changing urban area. So it's projected that by 2050, 88% of the city of Dallas will be people of color. In addition, Dallas is expected to grow to 3.3 million people by 2050, so we live in a huge city, as you all know. Unfortunately, the share of Dallas residents who live 2 times below the federal poverty level is 43%. So you can see there's a lot of poverty in the city of Dallas. If we look at this map of Dallas, we can see that unfortunately Dallas is one of the most segregated cities actually in the entire country. So white individuals primarily live in the northern part of Dallas, with Hispanic individuals in the south and east, and black individuals primarily in the southern part of Dallas. Between 1999 and 2015, the average median income of Dallas dropped by $10,000. The average black worker earns 54 cents per dollar compared to white workers in Dallas, and the average Hispanic worker earns 58 cents. Unfortunately, between 2006 and 2015, the lowest fifth of the income level in Dallas decreased by 7 percentage points, and the highest fifth, the wealthiest individuals in Dallas, their income grew by 5%. So we're seeing increasing disparity in the city of Dallas based on income levels. You can see when we look at the income levels throughout Dallas, you can lay it almost exactly over the population density by race and ethnicity. Seeing the blue areas on the left are the wealthy areas of Dallas, the highest income, and the gray and the black areas are less than $50,000 or less than $25,000 as the average income. Dallas is growing a lot and adding a lot of jobs, but you can see in terms of the jobs that the vast majority of jobs pay less than $50,000, which for a family of 4 is 200% of the federal poverty level, and about 2/3 of all jobs that are being added in Dallas are at that same range. So people, the jobs that are available aren't allowing people to not remain in poverty. White residents in Dallas are 5.2 times as likely as Hispanic individuals to have a college degree, and 2.4 times more likely than black residents. If we look at Dallas ISD in 2006, for students who would have been in 8th grade at that time, only 16.5% of them will have any sort of degree or credential today. And 73% of students in Dallas County Public Schools are economically disadvantaged. Lastly, in terms of health, 75% of all deaths in Dallas are caused by chronic diseases. About 20% of Dallas residents don't have health insurance, and black women in Dallas County are 3 times more likely than Hispanic residents to die from complications of childbirth. That is a lot of heavy information. It's all from the Communities Foundation of Texas Dallas Economic Opportunity Assessment. I did not come up with all of those numbers or pictures or graphs by myself. You can learn more about that and get that in my book. I link to it in my book in case you're interested in learning more. But I don't know about you, but when I think about all of those things, every time I go over those statistics, I just am filled with sadness and anger about the injustice that is happening in Dallas. And I also often feel like I need to do something. I need to engage and step into these spaces. But then I often also sometimes feel very overwhelmed and think, how can I do more? I am so limited. There's only so much that I can do. And so today I want to talk to us a little bit about time and how we can think about our limitations. So if you think about our average day, someone might sleep on average for 8 hours a night. Someone might also work for 8 hours a day. They might eat for 1 hour a day, drive for 1 hour a day, spend time with people in their life or caregiving for 2 hours per day, run errands for 30 minutes a day, spend time having a quiet time or a time of mindfulness for 30 minutes a day, get ready for the day for 30 minutes a day, and exercise for 30 minutes a day. Do you all see the dilemma we have here? This is a full 24 hours. And you could argue that all of those things really have to happen for us to be functioning humans in the world. And so we have a significant dilemma. Do we add more hours to our day? Do we neglect our neighbors and these areas of opportunity? Do we fit in loving others only when it works? Do we just simply feel guilty for not being able to do enough? Or could it be that we can step into a whole life approach to loving our neighbor? You all might have gotten a handout that links to a framework that I call the Sphere of Influence framework. This is a tool that I use whenever I have a cause or area of interest that I am passionate about that I want to step into as a neighbor. So today, I'm going to walk us through the Sphere of Influence framework from the concept of a specific cause that is close to my heart, which is refugees. Texas resettles the second largest number of refugees out of any state in the country, and Dallas resettles the second largest number of refugees out of any city in Texas. So we have a lot of refugee neighbors here in Dallas. I am the proud godparent of the son of one of my friends who is a refugee, and it's just an area that is really close to my heart. So when we think about engaging in spaces in Dallas in order to better love our neighbors, we often think, what do I need to do? Well, I need to give more money, or I need to spend more time in this issue. But often that is challenging because, as we just discussed, we are very limited when it comes to time and money. So what I like to do is think about, how can I think about more than just the money that I give or the time, the free time that I have? I often think about my finances in terms of not only my giving, but also my shopping. So we have Christmas coming up, and something I might think about is, could I have all of the gifts that I buy this year for Christmas be from refugee-owned businesses? I can also think about my investments. Can I seek to invest and look for a return on investment in investments I give to refugee-owned businesses? Of course, I can think about the money that I give, but I also can think about my other assets, like my home. Do I have a room in my house that I can open up to people who are fleeing from violence? I can think about my car and the transportation that I have. Can I offer that to someone else? When I think about my time, I can think about my free time, but I can also think about my commute time. Can I listen to a podcast on my drive to work and educate myself more related to issues that are important to me? I can think about my vacation time. I recently was able to lead a trip for friends to the border to learn about what's happening with immigration and asylum seekers at the border. And it was such a meaningful way to spend my PTO, and I wouldn't trade that for anything. I can think about my meal time. Can I invite some of my refugee neighbors over for dinner? Or can I spend my lunches at work connecting with people who might be immigrants? I can think about my exercise time. Can I invite someone along while I'm exercising to get to know them? I can also think about my work. I can think about my benefits. Are there any benefits that I have access to that I could leverage on behalf of others? Working for an airline, I receive buddy passes. So I can give out passes for other people to fly standby. Don't come up and ask me afterwards, though, for a free plane ticket. But I have been able to provide buddy passes to refugees who are flying home on that final leg of their journey. And it's been so meaningful, although a little challenging to navigate flying standby with someone who doesn't speak English and doesn't have a cell phone. But it has always successfully worked. I can also think about my job responsibilities, which we'll dive into more in a second. I can think about volunteerism. Can I organize 50 of my coworkers to go and engage in a cause that I care about? And I can think about consulting. With the technical skills that I have developed, can I leverage those for an hour a week on behalf of a nonprofit in the area? I can also think about the people in my life. Who are my peers? Am I real life, genuine friends with my refugee neighbors? I can think about the conversations that I'm having with my friends. Am I saying things that are true and encouraging? Am I bringing up the causes that matter? I can think about who I'm mentoring and who is coming up behind me that I'm investing in and encouraging. And I can think about my mentors and who I'm following. Could I ask someone who has been a refugee to be my mentor? I can think about my politics. I can think about voting, and not only on a national level, but also at our local politics, which is only 6% of people in Dallas are engaged and vote in local elections. So if all of us voted, we could probably sway a vote. I can think about advocacy of following my city council member on social media or showing up to a city council meeting. I can think about my faith. I can think about how I pray for those around me. I can also think about the lens through which I interpret and understand Scripture. For this topic of refugees, I can think about how Abraham was a climate refugee, as was Joseph, as was Ruth. As for me as a Christian, although this applies to most of the major world religions, I can think about how Jesus was a refugee. I can think about my church community and how I might engage in that space. And lastly, I can tie all of this back to my heart and my body and my mind. This isn't separate from who I am or the things that make me come alive. This isn't doing something out of obligation. This is doing something out of joy and delight and paying attention to my body and not trying to engage in burnout, but trying to engage in the practices of love. So I hope you all feel free to take that sphere of influence paper that I gave you, think about an area you might be interested in stepping into, and spend some time thinking how you can engage in that space more. One area I want to dive a little bit more deeply into is the concept of creating what I call shared value propositions. So I mentioned that I work for an airline as a consultant within our hiring practices, and I know many of you all maybe are self-employed or work for a small business or work for a corporation or work for a church. And I love thinking about this because I think all of us have opportunities to create shared value propositions on behalf of our neighbors. A few years ago, I had a neighbor, a couple that I was close to, and the boyfriend, Tyreek, he was in need of employment. So we were looking for him for jobs and looking at his resume, but we realized he wouldn't be able to come and work for my company because he didn't have his high school diploma or GED. And so he was locked out of jobs at my company and a lot of jobs around the country. Several years ago, during the pandemic, as you all I'm sure remember, everyone stopped traveling. So my airline, overnight, we lost 97% of our customers. So we froze hiring completely. But then in 2021, demand skyrocketed, and people were ready to travel again. We needed to hire thousands of people fast. And so we had the opportunity. How do we think about hiring practices in a way that maybe we haven't before that might have the potential to impact candidates around the country? So an area that you might not have thought a lot about is folks who don't have their high school diploma or GED. Approximately 10 to 15% of people every year don't graduate from high school, which means 10 to 15% of our country aren't eligible for jobs that have that as a minimum requirement. That's 8.4 million people, which if you look at the Cowboy Stadium here in Dallas, that would be 105 Cowboy Stadiums filled to maximum capacity of people who don't have their GED or high school diploma. But so many of those people potentially dropped out of school in 11th or 12th grade to earn money for their families. And so at my airline, we were able to do a deep dive into the data and into the research to say, what are the numbers telling us? Could this potentially be a valuable talent pool for Southwest, and could it have the potential to remove that barrier that doesn't need to exist? When we dug into the data, you can kind of see the business case, but I did make it, it's supposed to be clearer than that, but I did make it blurry, so you can't, steal all the numbers. But we dug into the data and found that, yes, on average, people who don't have their GED or diploma still have between 11 and 12 years of education under their belt. They just don't have that final step. So we were able to remove that requirement at Southwest, got it approved all the way up, and to date, we've been able to hire hundreds of candidates around the company who don't have their GED, and then pay for them to get their GED if they want to grow in their career at my company. And so it has been just such a neat way to what I call shared value propositions. What is something that is good on behalf of your neighbors that also can be good for your company or workplace? We often think that we go to work 9 to 5 and maybe we're disconnected from our neighborhoods, but because of my friend Tyreek, being able to see our workplaces are our places to be good neighbors. They are our places that we can think about our community. So today, We have spent the last few minutes talking about the past and the present realities of Dallas and how that might compel us towards action on behalf of our neighbors. We have talked about our limitations that exist and ways we can think about other ways to engage in our communities. And we've talked a little bit about our workplace and how we can think about shared value propositions. I wrote the Good Neighbor Guide because I wanted to create a tool. It's filled basically with 50 really tangible steps. Every step tells you how long it will take and how much money it will cost you in order to know practical ways you can engage in your community. The overview of the book is like this. It helps us reflect on our stories and learn how the history of Dallas impacts the city today. Then the steps are to explore ways to connect with our neighbors, build empathy, and serve locally. And lastly, broaden our perspectives on civic advocacy and ways to care for our shared environment. If you do want to support my work, the main thing you can do is go and bring some cookies to your closest neighbor or think about your sphere of influence. You also can buy a copy of my book over there, and I would recommend not just buying one copy of the book, but buy 2 copies of the book so that you can walk through it with your neighbor. To wrap us up today, I wrote a reflection on viewing our identity as neighbors that I want to read for you all today. So let me pull that up. We think of ourselves as daughters or sons, coworkers or leaders. We define ourselves as parents, as professionals, or as all of the above. We wear 1,000 hats, carry a dozen identity markers that distinguish who we are and how we show up in the world. They say if you define yourself as a runner, you'll be more likely to run. Saying, "I am a runner," transforms your will to go, to sweat, to tie your shoelaces and hit the pavement. I'm wondering how this principle might apply further. What might happen in the world if we elevated our identity as neighbors as seriously as if we took this title as seriously as the other hats that we wear? What if we said to ourselves each day, "I am a neighbor"? I imagine we might spend our time, more time thinking about how to love our neighbors. We might dream about blessing our neighborhoods just like we dream of planning a vacation or falling in love. We might strive for the good of our community like how we strive for a promotion or a higher salary. We might find greater community. We might discover an antidote to our loneliness as we look at the world around us and say, "I am your neighbor. You are my neighbor. We are in this together." Fred Rogers said this quote that I love: "All of us at some time or other need help. Whether we're giving or receiving help, each one of us has something valuable to bring to the world." That's one of the things that connects us as neighbors. In our own way, each one of us is a giver and a receiver. Today, try it for yourself. I am a neighbor. I am a neighbor. I am a neighbor. Thank you all so much for having me today.